Sometimes being good can be a curse. A hero who is too perfect, too strong, often makes for a boring story. We love adversity. We love to punish our protagonists, to see what they're made of. A hero may indeed have 1,000 faces, but there's only one hero myth, and in it we need our heroes to fail sometimes. That's what stimulates growth. And so it is with motorcycles. There's no perfect one, although this one comes pretty close for me. Tall, slender, strong, capable, multi-talented, its arrival has been long and hotly anticipated, and seemed so full of promise. Is this the one? That special unicorn capable of every kind of riding? Travel across the continent on the highway in comfort and tear up the twisties and single track when you get there. This bike has been my companion for a week, and while that's not long enough for a long-term impression, it's long enough to let you know its capabilities and, yes, its limits. Because after the first couple of rides where it blew my mind with its amazing ability and easily handled everything I threw at it, I set out to find those limits. And I did. Because I pushed this bike harder than most owners ever will. And because everyone has limits, and everyone eventually bounces up against them. Custer had Little Bighorn, the Spartans had Thermopylae, and the Tenere 700 has Heartbreak Hill. A rutted, rocky, muddy, poorly maintained ATV trail going off into the forest behind my cottage. It starts out innocuously enough, with a mild grade and some muddy sections, but halfway through it kicks up into what I call the wall. The rocks and roots get bigger, the ruts get deeper and wider, and the grade becomes impressively steep. Never in my wildest dreams did I entertain taking my 600-pound Moto Guzzi Stelvio up this hellish ascent, but the T7? Why not? So what's the Tenere 700 like in day-to-day riding? How did it fare on increasingly difficult terrain as the week went on, culminating in the big climb up Heartbreak Hill? Stay tuned for a full report, the good, the bad, and the crazy. First, a disclaimer. I'm not the most skilled off-roader. I never rode dirt bikes as a kid, or as an adult for that matter. My trail experience comes from riding mountain bikes over some fairly extreme terrain. But guiding a 28-pound mountain bike on gnarly single track is not like riding a 450-pound motorcycle on rough trails. 28 pounds are easy to catch. 450? Well. Also, I never aired down the tires. I know I should have. That would have made off-roading this bike much easier. But I wasn't carrying a pump to inflate them back up. Instead, I tackled each off-road piece with tires well above 30 psi. I know that because of the Tire Minder, a handy tire gauge system that Bluetooths to your phone and allows you to instantly check your tire pressure. Link in the description, $5 off with the promo code SPOKES2020. Smooth. So I'm no motocrosser, and neither are most of the folks who will buy this bike. And if most owners take it on trails like I tackled, I'll be shocked. But if it can handle these trails with a mediocre rider like me at the helm, then it will have done its job and then some. Now if you want the specs, look them up. I'm here to tell you how it feels, not to test it against other bikes on paper. Let's talk about the looks. Adventure bikes are not supposed to look good. Form follows function, yada yada. Some offend more than others, but ADV bikes have a reputation for being ugly. Maybe they are, but my view is that making them look good doesn't hurt. And I know the Tenere won't look good to everyone. If you're into Harleys or classic Triumphs, you won't dig this styling. But then you're not the target market for this bike. The fact is that the Tenere is the closest the bike gets to looking like something racing across the Moroccan desert. And a lot of riders will appreciate that, me included. When you look closely, there are some budget-cutting details. The dash is black and white, the gas cap doesn't swivel up and has to be removed when fueling, the turn signals are ugly and non-LED. The rally version has LEDs, but that will probably arrive in Canada when I'm 80. Speaking of the signals, one of the rear ones kept popping out when the bike went over bumps. Don't know if it was damaged by a previous tester or if all of them do that. Hope they don't. And as stated in my last video, the windshield directed the airflow straight at my helmet, and the seat was reasonably comfortable when I was alone on the bike, because it was flat and I could shift around. But with my wife Brooke on the back, it was comfortable for neither one of us. It's definitely not a 2-up bike, not for long trips anyways. So on the highway it's just okay. If you want a bike for that, get a bigger motorcycle. Oh, and the lights look great but could be brighter at night. So every hero has some warts. This bike is the least expensive of its immediate competitors unless you include the V-Strom, which has far less off-road ability. Nothing's perfect, but does the Tenere manage to make up for its shortcomings by standing out in other regards? For me, yes. Besides looking good, it is an incredibly versatile motorcycle. On the road, it rides and handles remarkably well for a bike designed to spend time in the dirt. It rocks a twisty road with the best of them and keeps its line while leaned over with none of the weaving or the sensation of falling into turns that plagues some other adventure bikes with 21-inch front wheels. My main criticism on pavement is that the suspension is harsher than the competition over bumps, but I didn't really get enough time to dial it in. When I get mine, I'll play with it some more. The seating position is more sit-up and beg than sport bike. The pegs are forward and the handlebar is high to allow you to stand. Standing position worked for me, but the cheap smooth plastics on the sides of the seat and tank were too slippery to firmly grip with the knees. Yamaha sells accessory textured panels to replace the stock ones. They should have put them on this bike in the first place. The T7 won't take you everywhere, but it will take you more places than most of its competitors. It's the lightest bike in its class, its wheels are 21 and 18 inches, the proper size for going over obstacles, and it's incredibly easy for the regular person to ride off-road. Is the KTM 790 Adventure R more capable than the Tenere? Yes, under a professional rider. However, most of us aren't professionals, though sometimes we delude ourselves into thinking we are. Seeing some racer blasting around on a bike and professionally shot, carefully planned and choreographed stunts makes us dream. But then we see ourselves on video and reality hits us in the face. The average rider doesn't need the latest and the greatest. The average rider needs the easiest to ride. And the Tenere 700 is the easiest. A bike that flatters its pilot and makes him think he can go anywhere. The T7 has great geometry and the perfect engine. Yes, I said perfect, for this application. Why? Because it's wildly flexible. It's almost impossible to bog down. Accidentally leave it in too high a gear heading up a steep hill, it doesn't care. It will chug up there like a thumper. Wind it up on a twisty paved road, it will keep up with bikes with a lot more power. It makes power where it counts for legal-ish road speeds. Low in the rev range with a flat torque curve and peak horsepower be damned. It's powerful enough to be fun but not powerful enough to need fancy electronics to rein it in before it launches you into orbit. It's utterly predictable on and off-road. Other details? The dash may not look like an iPad, but it's easy to read in any light. It has a gear indicator, gas gauge, a giant speedo, and some other trip meters and fuel consumption counters that you can cycle through with one button. Another button turns off the ABS for off-road action. The lawyers made Yamaha only make this possible while the bike is stopped. Also, turning off the bike defaults to ABS on mode. Range? It takes about 300 kilometers of paved riding to get down to the final bar on the fuel gauge. Though judging by how much fuel the bike still had in the tank when I filled it up, there was still close to 100k to go before you'd have to push it. The dash does vibrate on bumpy roads, but I wonder if that's built in as a shock absorber to protect the electronics. There's an aftermarket fix that secures the dash to the fairing, but I probably won't bother. Tires. The Pirelli Scorpion Rally STRs are good, but tires for a bike like this will always be a compromise. No tire is good on all terrain. Despite looking pretty chunky, these tires were perfectly smooth on the pavement with no vibration from the semi-knobbies, even when leaned over in a turn. Traction on pavement was never an issue. As stated before, I never aired down for off-road, yet the tires handled gravel, rocks, and dirt very well. Where they started reaching their limits was in deep sand and mud. You need bigger knobs for that, but then of course, road performance and durability suffers. I like the Scorpions and will probably replace them with the same when I wear them out. They're a good balance for the type of riding that I do, which is mostly road with some gravel, dirt, and the occasional rocky trail. So as the week wore on, I tried more and more challenging trails until I got to one in particular the day after a long heavy rain. This one started out easy enough until you got deeper into the woods and it kicked up and became more wet with bigger rocks and roots and even some switchbacks on climbs. This was definitely challenging and became more so the further I went. Eventually I came to a pretty gnarly section and started thinking about the fact that I was alone in the middle of nowhere and that this wasn't my bike and that it weighed 450 pounds and that I was sweating buckets. And that in The Art of War, Sun Tzu wrote, "There will be times you need to disengage from a fight so you can be in a position to fight another day. Not only do dead men don't talk, they cannot fight or defend anything." I decided that Sun Tzu had a good point and turned around. Just retracing my steps over that terrain would be challenge enough. Drenched in sweat and covered in mud, I limped home a little humbler and a little bit more realistic about both my and the Tenere's abilities. And so I lived to fight another day. And that day came when I decided to roll up Heartbreak Hill. Older, wiser, definitely wearier, still not smart enough to air down, the Tenere and I headed out on our greatest challenge. We would conquer all obstacles or meet our own Thermopylae on that hill. When we hit the steep part, it seemed the latter would be the case. Now earlier I mentioned that the Tenere was the lightest bike in class, but that is the class of middleweight adventure bikes, 450 to 500 pounds. It is certainly not anywhere near as light as any enduro, especially with a full tank which sits high and makes an already tall bike top heavy on a steep hill. Lifting a bike that is laying flat on a 30% climb while the handlebar is stuck is, interesting. Lifting it a second time makes you wish that the gym where you do your deadlifts hadn't closed due to, you know. Some difficulties are of our own making and some victories are small, but success, when and if it comes, is still sweet. All the sweeter when it's not guaranteed. A dirt bike would have danced up that hill without a hiccup, but when an adventure bike ridden by an amateur makes it, well, that's what makes a story worth telling. So is the Tenere 700 going to hang with a 500 EXC in Moab, Utah? Not a chance. But would I have taken any other adventure bike up this hill? No. That's what the Tenere does. It fills you with confidence, maybe too much. It handles rough terrain so well that it seems to be begging for more. And when you give it more and it hits its limit, it hits it hard. But that limit is further than almost any of its competitors, so it can be forgiven. Human error is more to blame than the motorcycle, which really wasn't designed for this kind of abuse. And after all, we love to see our heroes abused. We don't mind seeing them fall, because we want to see them get up. It's a metaphor for life. We want to believe that we can pick ourselves up and move forward, that we can be knocked down but will never stay down. Am I glad I bought this bike? Dang right. There's something to be said about having the ability to chomp through the woods, hit one button and tear up some twisty pavement before heading home on a freeway in relative comfort. Is this the unicorn? It is for my kind of riding. There are bikes out there better on pavement and there are bikes that are better off it, but none gets the balance quite so right for such a reasonable price. So I hope that mine gets here soon, because 1 week isn't enough. If you're looking for something for a wide range of terrain, this one is pretty solid, warts and all. Cheers. If you're interested in any of the gear that Brooke and I wear or use, or the camera equipment we use to film this channel, the links are below. Everything listed there was bought with our own money and we are not sponsored by any company. However, the links below are affiliate links and the channel is paid a small amount for referring you to shop at no additional cost to you. We do not recommend any products that we are not satisfied with ourselves, but we do strongly urge you to do your research and select the correct size for items like helmets and clothing. As always, thanks for watching, your support is greatly appreciated. Please hit that subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. And whatever you ride, enjoy it. Wave at other bikers no matter what they're riding. We're all part of a brotherhood and sisterhood. Keep the rubber side down, shiny side up, and may the spokes be with you.